Ever feel like you were fated to be friends with someone? An alchemy in your meeting, instant fondness, part chemical, part kismet. This is how I've felt about every friend I've fallen in love with, none so much as you. Now that you're gone, I want to talk about you more than I care to admit. I find ways to meander and you bend conversations into stories with you at the yoke of them. While the friendships we forge inhabit us, there's no escaping that one day we'll be without them. They may go kindly, with expected effervescence, or, as with you, ungentle and sudden. Either way, grief will come for the heart exposed, like hungry seabirds for a carcass washed ashore. The invisibility in missing you can be savage. Often it feels such extreme emotion should be worn as a sash or a garish lanyard, visually obvious in a manner that commands attention or, at the very least, avoidance. Think a massive mottled bruise, alluding to dramatics, or hair going grey from some horrendous fright. Other times, this couldn't be further from the truth, and the idea that people might bear witness to my grief is humiliating and abhorrent. I started writing this because I needed a way to keep talking to you, to honour, then outlive the loss and commemorate the impact you've had on me. It's how we stay together now we're torn apart. Like Ernest Hemingway said, write hard and clear about what hurts. We often spoke about finding our friends finding us, what I would chance to call the mathematics of male friendship, yet you were smarter and clearer about, although I can't for the life of me remember how you worded it because it was more a feeling than a phrase. We mused on being older starters, the joy in having all this catching up to do, about preparing ourselves for loving and losing more friends than any other category of human relationship, the mettle this takes. There was still so much I needed to share with you, this, my method of addressing that, this book, which started as a celebration of you and grew into a celebration of many friendships, perhaps all friendship. What began sweet and meek, yet more lurid than I hoped for, was soon striving to be a testimony for survival. Its list of ingredients including heartwood and hidden lilacs. Could you call it a paean for beauty? More tersely, it is composed from pain, rationalization, miles and miles of walking and long hours staring down the distance. Funny how missing you has me fishing through my own past, rummaging in the understory of my boyfriends, has me sculpting maxims and conjuring conclusions. If there is a day of reckoning ahead, above all else, I hope to be judged on the friendships I cherished and the love I invested in them.